Let's take you to the US because earlier this week, President Trump signed an executive order entitled Ending Taxpayer Subsidisation of Biased Media, which threatened to cut the federal funding to NPR, National Public Radio, and PBS, the public broadcasting service. Both organisations preparing to challenge it legally. Now, Trump's administration argue it's outdated, it's against press freedom. He's criticised both NPR in the past and PBS, saying that they're, quote, radical left monsters. Well, in this week of 100 days of President Trump, we can also look behind the scenes of 100 days inside the press room. Changes being made. The new right-wing media that's been welcomed in, including the White House press correspondent for Steve Bannon's War Room, Natalie Winters. She's been speaking to CNN this week, who asked whether she was really a journalist or a propagandist.
Right now, the briefing room, the seats are, big networks up front. You're hoping that will be rearranged, that outlets like yourself might have a more prominent seat here?
Definitely. If it were up to me, I'd kick a lot of these outlets out. I view my role here more as sort of reporting on not so much the White House, but really the media.
But to the people, and I'm sure you see this online every single day, who say you don't deserve to be here because you're not a real journalist, what's your response to them?
Well, I'm pretty sure the group of people in there spent, 4 years covering for someone who was essentially dead, and that's being charitable in my description of him, a president by the name of Joe Biden. So to all those people who are apoplectic over having new media voices, you guys failed, and that's why we're here.
Natalie Winters, I should say, wanted to chuck a few people out of there. Let's bring in Fraser Jackson, France 24's White House correspondent. Fraser, great to have you on the programme this evening. Looking back at some significant changes, talk us through the dynamic, what you've witnessed in the past 100 days and what it's like right now in there.
Things have shifted significantly. Before the Trump administration this time, and for the last 100 or so years, the access to the White House was basically controlled by a non-profit group of journalists called the White House Correspondent Association, which everybody had to pay to be a member of, but then we had democratic elections where we would vote for who we wanted to be our president, who we wanted to represent the TV, radio, the news wires, the photographers, all different genres of media. And they were the ones who drew up the seating chart for the briefing room. They were also the ones who controlled the press pools. So the group of 13 or 21 journalists who go into the more intimate parts of the White House, like the Oval Office and like the East Room, that was all controlled by the White House Correspondents Association. So the WHCA say that it should not be up to the government to choose the journalists who cover the administration. And that was a bedrock principle that every administration, up until this administration, has adhered by. Well, the Trump administration this time have really tried to seize control of who gets access to those press areas. So they are now putting the wires, so people like Associated Press, Reuters news agency, the Agence France Presse, AFP as well, and Bloomberg, they are now in the wider rotation with more outlets, so over 30 outlets who rotate every day to report on what the president's doing, but in a very matter-of-fact way. There's no political spin on the poll reports. They get sent out to thousands of people, thousands of news outlets, thousands of people on Capitol Hill and other governments as well. They are very factual things, but even that has started to change somewhat. It's also started to impact the foreign press as well. That's the control that the White House has tried to seize over the wider press pool. They are now trying to seize over the foreign pool as well, which I am a member of, which is how I get access to those more intimate spaces. So they're now bringing in more foreign journalists into that rotation as well. And on top of that, there's also been a big influx of non-traditional and non-legacy media, as the White House likes to put it. The right-wing influencers now are coming into the White House in a much bigger number. And the White House is even now starting to hold separate briefings for some of these influencers as well. Caroline Leavitt has held a couple of these over the course even just of the last week. But a lot of those influencers do tend to skew more right-wing, and some of them even have connections to the administration or to Donald Trump more directly. So it's been a significant shift. The White House says that it's doing it to be more transparent and to get more eyes on the White House. They say a lot more Americans are not getting their information through those traditional media outlets, which of course is true. A lot of these influencers have millions of followers, and some of them have followings that some outlets could only dream of. But it is now bringing into question the whole idea of fact-checking fact-checking and more unbiased coverage of the White House, because a lot of these influencers are asking questions which are a lot more of like a softball for the administration, really. So it's certainly a new challenging media environment, and those traditional and legacy media outlets need to figure out where they stand in this new environment.
Well, let's talk about who's doing the air traffic control for this, which is Caroline Levitt, once an intern under the first administration of Donald Trump, now the firm favourite, it seems, in the way she's interacting, directing, deflecting the press, and suggesting that she's also tipped for a cabinet post. She's been talking to the new media this week. This was a TikTok hit she did on her life inside the White House.
This is my office. I have obviously photos of myself with the president. You also have a picture of me, and that's my baby, my 9-month-old son. That was from our senior staff swearing-in ceremony. And then this picture here is from my first briefing. This is my fun little cork board. This is a 7th grade class from Georgia who came to visit. Their dad is one of my colleagues here in the White House, and they asked if I could go speak to the students, and they wrote me and sign this cute little thing. Another picture of my baby on his first Air Force One flight. And then this is a meme that I love. It's a man pointing at a brain, and it says, "No thanks, I won't be needing that because I believe everything the legacy media shows." So look, we want critical thinking around here.
What's your take on the ascent of Caroline Levitt, and what are you seeing behind the scenes?
I think Caroline is a great spokesperson for Donald Trump. She is very competent. She is very switched on, a very smart woman. She knows how to get Donald Trump's message across. Of course, her role there is to represent the president and to put his message across to the media. And in private, she's very nice. She's very friendly. She's very amicable to us as well. We've had great meetings with Caroline. I was in a meeting with her just last week. But of course, the real kind of worry from the wider press corps is that there is a shift away from what's kind of been the status quo and more a tilt towards the MAGA sphere, as it were. There was a kind of unspoken agreement through many generations and many administrations over the last 100 years or so since the WHCA has been there. There's a real kind of a push and pull, really. The White House understands that they need the press, and the press understands that they need the White House. So they can say things on camera, but behind the scenes, there is still a lot of dealings between the two, and a lot of whether it's information or simply logistical things on how to cover the president, where his next trip is going to be. Those kind of things have always been ongoing, and it's kind of been a game that we've been kind of playing, a back and forth game. This time around, it feels much more that actually there is the game ongoing, but actually the kind of underlying rules of that game have changed somewhat. And I think Caroline kind of represents that, but she is a great press secretary in the sense that she gets Donald Trump's message across, and she is doing the job that he wants her to do.
Talk us through the ethical questions this week that have been raised by the ABC interview with President Trump for the 100 days, because the headlines over whether it was the president or ABC that decided the interview with Terry Moran. And that matters because there were suggestions that ABC might have stepped beyond the journalistic ethical boundary, which is that an organisation says, this is us doing the interview. It doesn't matter who's doing it. You don't get to decide. But this is what triggered the questioning.
Let's move on.
Wait a minute.
Hey, Terry.
He did not
have the letter
MS13. It says MS13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. I picked you, Terry, but you're not being very nice.
Fraser, I've seen Associated Press and others talk through and quote some of the journalistic bodies saying that if that's the case, it's not the right ethics for an organisation to also be allowing Trump to decide, but it could also be bluff. And I don't think we've heard from ABC, have we, on this one?
No, it's still kind of unclear as to how this happened. I will say I'm quite good friends with with the ABC White House correspondent. So Terry Moran is one of their bigger names, but he's not somebody who you see at the White House very often. So it was somewhat of a surprise to me and my other colleagues when we saw that he was the person conducting the interview. But that interview has also become quite kind of iconic now in the fact that it showed Donald Trump believed the fact that the photo of those tattoos which showed MS13, he thought that was a real photo, that the letters MS and the numbers 13 were written on Abrego Garcia's hands. Of course, it has been shown that is Photoshop and those are not real images, but that has really kind of put forward a whole question as to whether Donald Trump understands exactly what's happening in this whole situation. So an interesting choice by ABC, but also an interesting choice by Terry Moran as well, because if that had happened in an interview that I had been doing with the president, I'd like to think that I would have drilled down a bit further into that to try to really understand whether the president did actually believe that that was a real photo and not Photoshop. So again, the fact that he tried to move on from that's also interesting.
Yeah, we all wanted to see the image, didn't we? So he was looking at the image. He could say that is photoshopped. It doesn't say MS-13. Fraser, a delight to talk to you. Let's see what state you're in, what state the White House is in the next 100 days. Fraser Jackson, our correspondent at the White House.